几位妇女带着预备好的香料来到坟前，发现墓口的大石头已经滚到旁边，便进去，却没有看见主耶稣的遗体。正在猜疑之间，突然有2个衣服发光的人站在旁边，他们吓得匍匐在地。那2个人对他们说：“你们为什么在死人中找活人呢？他不在这里，已经复活了。记住他在加利利对你们说的话。人子必须被交在罪人的手中，被钉在十字架上，第3天复活。”他们想起耶稣的话来，便离开墓地回去，把事情的经过告诉11个使徒和其他人。这些妇女就是抹大拉的玛利亚、约亚娜、雅各的母亲玛利亚及其他人。大家听了都不相信，认为是无稽之谈。彼得却起身跑到墓地，屈身往墓里张望，只见细麻布在那里，他便离开了，对发生的事大惑不解。这是主的福音，赞美主基督。弟兄姊妹，请坐。好，我们Today it's an honor and privilege to have a Pastor Karen Bach preaching the Easter message for us. 我们今天很高兴 Pastor Karen Bach 为我们传讲这个复活节的信息。
早上好。
早上好。
Better?
Very good.
Yes. Let us pray. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts be acceptable to you, O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer.
愿我口中的话语和心里的默想都蒙你的悦纳，我们的磐石，我们的救世主。阿们。
I will confess to you that the Easter sermon is a daunting one to write. Why? Well, it has more to do with the pressure of trying to address the deepest and toughest questions we have as people of faith, as we boldly stand and profess Christ is risen. Those words are a truth that we did not personally witness more than 2,000 years ago. Those words are a truth that we believe in faith on our good days and question on the toughest of our days.
Pastor Karen 说：“我要承认复活节的这个讲章并不是容易写的，为什么呢？因为今天当我们有信仰的人大胆地站在这里宣称基督复活了的时候，那我们面对着一些非常深刻而且很困难的问题，要在今天的讲章里来回应这些问题呢，我觉得还是有一些压力。基督复活了，这话是一个真理，但是我们没有在2000年前亲身见证这个真理。当我们一帆风顺的时候，这个真理好像容易相信，但是呢，在日子变得艰难的时候，我们就会对这个真理也许会产生疑惑。
Some of us are here today because we want to hear the witness for ourselves, to be reminded of God's promises, resurrection, hope, and love. Some of us are here today because, quite frankly, our faith feels as empty as the tomb. We are hoping beyond hope that maybe a gospel story about an encounter with a risen Christ just may be what we need to fill that hollowness inside. And some of us, truthfully, are here because it is expected that we be here in worship this morning. We are here out of duty and loyalty and nothing else.
我们有些人今天来到教会，是因为我们想自己亲耳听见耶稣复活的见证，我们想再次提醒我们自己上帝的应许、复活、盼望和爱。我们还有一些人坦白地说，今天来到教会是因为我们的信心像坟墓一样空空如也。我们特别希望听到耶稣基督复活的故事，我们希望这个故事能够帮助填补我们内心的空虚。我们还有一些人今天来到教会，是因为出于责任感，是因为出于忠诚感，因为我们是基督徒，所以我们今天就来教会。
We are a mixed bag of disciples, you and I, and yet we gather here, bringing with us hope and expectation, grief and disappointment, curiosity and wonder, cynicism and doubt. We gather here just as we are, leaving the rest up to God to do God's thing.
那我们都是带着不同的动机和期望来到教会里的人，我们聚集在这里，带来了我们的希望和盼望、哀伤和失望、好奇心和惊讶感、愤世嫉俗和怀疑。我们聚集在这里，以真真实实的面孔出现。我们把其他的交托给上帝，让上帝做上帝做的事情。
So let us go to the tomb, just like the women in our gospel passage from Luke, and tend to our relationship with Jesus. And let us go to the tomb, just like Peter in that same gospel passage, with great hope of getting a glimpse of what does not make sense to us.
那么，让我们先去坟墓。就像我们刚才聆听的路加福音书里的那几位妇女，她们去坟墓是因为她们想和耶稣保持关系。让我们去坟墓，就好像福音书里讲的彼得，彼得去坟墓是因为他希望能够对那大惑不解的事情能够理出一个头绪来。
The women who bore witness to the resurrection in Luke's gospel were Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary the mother of James, and other unnamed women. They were devoted disciples who arrived early that morning out of a sense of duty, ready and willing to fulfill a responsibility, wanting to offer the last gifts that they could give the body of Jesus, their love and devotion.
在路加福音里，那几位为耶稣复活做见证的妇女是马达纳的玛利亚、约亚拿、雅各的母亲玛利亚，还有其他几个没有姓名的妇女。她们是耶稣忠实的门徒，出于责任感，他们在清晨一大早来到墓地，他们要尽心履行责任，他们想要为耶稣的遗体献上最后的一份礼物，他们的爱和忠诚。
But when they arrived, they saw that the stone had been rolled away. The body that they sought was gone. Instead, they found two men in dazzling clothes, angels of sorts, who met them where they were, witnessed to them about the reality in front of them, and stirred their memories about the words of Jesus so that they could remember them, as in put them back together. Go ahead.
但是来着，当他们到达这个几个妇女到达墓地的时候，发现堵住坟墓口的那个大石头已经滚到旁边，他们想见的遗体却不见了。他们遇见了两个衣服发光的人，是天使。天使解释他们所见到的这种现象，天使提醒他们记住耶稣曾经对他们说过的话，这样他们就能够明白亲眼所见的到底意味着什么。
The angels met them where they were, asking, "Why do you look for the living among the dead?" Then they commented on the reality in front of them. He is not here, he is risen. And then the angels stirred their memories. Remember how Jesus told you when he was still in Galilee, that the Son of Man must be handed over to sinners, be crucified, and on the third day rise again.
那天使知道这几位妇女的心思，就问他们说：“你们为什么在死人中间找活人呢？”然后天使对他们所见的做出了一个解释，告诉他们说：“他不在这里，已经复活了。”接着，天使让他们记起耶稣曾经对他们说过的话，那就是人子必须被交在罪人手中，被钉在十字架上，在第3天复活。
And in those brief moments of how we measure time, God's time, Kairos, brought the past and the present together into a new reality, an empty tomb, and the resurrection of Jesus. And when these women shared the news with the rest of the disciples, their words seemed like an idle tale, and they did not believe them.
那在这个短暂的时刻，上帝的时刻，关键的时刻，上帝的时间，把过去和现在组合起来，构成了一个新的现实，那就是空的坟墓和耶稣的复活。 当这几位妇女把他们听到的消息告诉其他的门徒的时候，他们都不相信，认为这是无稽之谈。
So Peter, remember, he is the disciple who denied that he knew Jesus. Peter went to the tomb for himself to look inside. And when he stooped and looked in, he saw the linens lying there by themselves with no body in them. He didn't see any angels. He didn't hear the good news that Christ was risen. He just saw the empty linens. And then he went home amazed.
那彼得，我们记得，那个曾经否认过耶稣的彼得，跑到坟墓，想自己看个究竟。他屈身往那个坟墓里张望，只看见包裹尸体的那个细麻布，尸体却不见了。彼得没有遇见天使，也没有听见天使宣告耶稣复活的好消息，他只是看到了细麻布。于是呢，他就回家去了，对发生的事情惊讶不已。
That's the resurrection story from Luke. The first part with the women encountering these men in dazzling robes who brought the past teachings of Jesus and the present reality of the empty tomb into this well-timed, Kairos, God-filled moment where they remembered, put it all together, all that they knew and understood about who Jesus was and what he had said would happen and then did happen. And they felt the power of that moment and went to tell and share this good news with the other disciples. And then there is the second part of the resurrection account about Peter, a disciple who once denied Jesus but was led to an encounter of his own with an empty tomb and left it wondering what had happened.
路加福音就是这样记载耶稣复活的。第一部分就是几个妇女看到了衣服发光的人，那就是天使。天使把耶稣的教导，把空的坟墓交织在一起，建构了一个充满上帝的那个关键的时刻，帮助他们记住并且理解耶稣是谁，耶稣怎么说，事情后来又怎么照着耶稣所说的发生了。他们被那个被上帝充满的关键时刻的力量所震撼，他们就出去跟门徒分享耶稣复活的好消息。那复活的这个叙事的第二个部分是彼得，那个曾经否认过耶稣的彼得，他看到了空空如也的坟墓，就离开了，对发生的事情感到大惑不解。
Each of those, and both of those experiences are part of the unresolved mystery and wonder of the resurrection of Jesus. And every year we are left to, once again, struggle with what Jesus' resurrection means to us and for us. Every year we are left to once again struggle with what it means to accept the witness about it of someone else.
他们妇女和那些和彼得，他们各自，他们一起经历了令人惊异，但是却无法解释的耶稣的复活。每一年我们在复活节的时候，再一次听到耶稣复活的故事。每一年我们要一次又一次的努力来理解，接受他人有关耶稣复活的见证。那对我们来说，究竟意味着什么？耶稣的复活对我们来说意味着什么？
I want to take us back to the women at the tomb and the way that impact of remembering the words of Jesus drew them into a deeper understanding of the reality of the resurrection in that God-filled moment. And I want to also take us to a place and a moment in time where we purposely stop and give thanks and remember what Jesus said to us. I want to take us to that moment when we gather around the table, break bread together, and hear those words, "This is my body broken for you. This is my blood shed for you." And finally, I want to share with you a story in which the power of remembering and remembering is also one of those God-filled Kairos moments in which we can encounter the impact of the risen Christ in our lives.
那我想把大家带回到那几位妇女在坟墓的时刻，在那个被上帝充满的关键的时刻，他们 在那个时刻回忆起了耶稣的话语，就深刻地理解了耶稣复活的这个事实。我想把大家带到一个地方，一个时刻，在那里我们停一下，感恩，记住耶稣对我们说的话。我想把大家带到这样的时刻，我们聚集在圣坛前，一起掰饼，听见耶稣对我们说：“这是我的身体，为你舍的；这是我的宝血，为你流的。”最后呢，我想跟大家分享一个记忆力的力量的故事。在被上帝充满的那个关键的时刻，我们可以感到复活的耶稣的影响。
Laverne was a long-time faithful church member, raising both her children and grandchildren in the church. I met her later in her life, delivering home communion to both her and her husband until he died and she was moved to memory care. Every visit with Laverne began with me telling her who I was, telling her about her dog and her home and all the other things about her life that she had forgotten. And when it came time to share in Holy Communion together, I would pick up the wafer and hold it in between us. And then I would tell her that I was going to tell her a story. And when she remembered that story, she was to join me in telling it. And every visit, Laverne would say, "I don't know any stories." And then I would say, "On the night of betrayal and desertion," and Laverne's eyes would lock on me and that wafer, and she would continue, "Jesus took bread, gave thanks, and gave it to the disciples, saying, 'This is my body given for you.'"
拉文是一个有信心的老姊妹，她的子女和孙子都是在教会里成长的。在她年迈的时候 ，Pastor Karen 把圣餐带给她的丈夫和她。拉文的丈夫去世了，拉文呢也搬到了一个照顾失去记忆的人的老人院。每次呢 ，Pastor Karen 去探访拉文的时候呢，都要跟他说他是谁，跟他提起他的狗和他的家，还有许多拉文已经记不起来的事情了。在分享这个圣餐的时候呢，Pastor Karen 牧师呢，这就拿起那个小饼，告诉这个拉文说，我要讲一个故事，如果你记起这个故事，你可以跟我一起来讲这个故事。每一次拉文都说，我记不起任何故事。这时候呢，Pastor Karen 牧师就开始说他的故事，讲的第一句说，当耶稣被出卖、被这个背叛的、被离弃的那一夜，这时候呢，拉文的眼睛突然睁大了，就盯着 Pastor Karen 和那个圣餐那个小饼。拉文这时候就真的记起了那个故事，他就接着说，拉文就接着说，耶稣拿起饼来出现了，递给他的门徒说，这是我的身体，为你舍的。
There is power in remembering who we are and whose we are. There is power in remembering the words of Jesus. They are what offer us hope when all seems hopeless. They are the words that remind us of God's love for us and how we are to love one another. They are the words that come to us in the dismal places of our lives when we are left looking for and seeking hope or grace or forgiveness or healing or acceptance. Those words of Jesus become words that help us remember our lives and our relationship with God.
当我们记住我们是谁，我们属于谁，我们就拥有了一种力量。记住耶稣的话语会带给我们力量。在没有希望的时候，耶稣的话语带来希望。耶稣的话语提醒我们上帝对我们的爱，提醒我们要彼此相爱。在我们举步维艰的时候，耶稣的话语带给我们希望、恩典、宽恕、医治和接纳。耶稣的话语帮助我们记住我们是谁和我们与上帝的关系。
This morning on Easter Sunday, as we celebrate the resurrection of Jesus, we read and hear and say those words, Alleluia, Christ is risen. We remember the first time we said them, we hear ourselves say them, and we remember all the other times we have read or heard or said those very words. And in that moment, we encounter one of those God-filled Kairos moments where we know, and I mean understand, even if for a brief moment in time when we get it, we get the mystery and wonder of the empty tomb.
那今天是复活节的早晨，我们一起庆祝耶稣基督的复活。我们一起聆听、阅读，然后大声说：“哈利路亚！基督复活了。”我们记得第一次说这话的时候，我们听见自己说这话，我们记住在其他的时间也聆听过，也说过这话。在这样的时刻，我们就是和被上帝充满的关键时刻相遇。这个时候，我们知道，我们明白，即使是在很短暂的一个时刻，我们真的明白那空坟墓的奥秘和惊奇。
We are a mixed bag of disciples, you and I. We gather with our hope and expectation, grief and disappointment, curiosity and wonder, cynicism and doubt. But we gather under an empty cross, celebrating an empty tomb, contemplating the good news that Christ is risen, surrounded by friends and family and faces that may even be new to us, waiting for God to do God's thing, and then realizing that we know more about hope and the power of resurrection now, after all we've been through, now more than any other time in our lives.
你我都是带着不同的动机和期望来到教会里的人，我们聚集在空荡荡的十字架的下面，带着我们的希望和期盼、哀伤和失望、好奇和困惑、愤世嫉俗和怀疑。我们庆祝一个空的坟墓，我们思量基督复活的福音。我们周围有朋友、有家人，还有新的面孔。我们等待上帝来做上帝的事情。在这个时候呢，我们觉得比以往的时候都更加明白基督的复活所带来的希望和力量。
Can we close together?
OK.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Christ is risen. Christ is risen indeed.
Hallelujah.